You tell they're pretty generic.
Yeah, but
So, no, so police had 84 as part of this field operator. That 84 was moved to police vehicles by the mayor. No, 520 was their, yeah, it's just their budget. Are you planning on taking it?
So it's this plus carry to. Instead of using that. Speed up.
So, except for that. To the citizens, we said we're going to stormwater. So if you take this and use it, body, secure, like you said. But, is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I mean, if someone wants to. Sales tax.
I'd bring Andrew.
So, I
Hmm?
mean, Andrew's here.
Does it sit next to him? I can't see. 'cause
All
it's in the
right,
way.
good
I
evening,
can't see.
everyone. I have 5:32 on my clock,
It is.
so I will call this meeting of the Budget Committee to order. Ms. Bexton, will you please call the roll?
Fitzwater. Hensley.
Present.
Kemna.
Here.
Lester.
Here.
Shriver. Spencer.
Here.
Spicer.
Present.
Vogt.
Here.
Ward. Here. Wiseman.
Present.
Thank you very much. Our next order of business is continuing with department presentations and leading off, Mr. Sanders, Planning and Protective Services. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Got a PowerPoint here to accompany me. I did pass out a copy of the PowerPoint to the committee members in hope that I can be very brief, but if there are issues or questions on each slide, I'd be glad to go into more detail. My department has 8 different budget items, categories, if you will. They're all up there on the board. I have 5 divisions. The planning and zoning has 2 budgets. The neighborhood services has 2. And actually, with the recent grant acceptance, there's another one that I'm not sure. Finance might be able to answer if that's going to be part of this year's or next year's budget, but it's the CARES CV money that has been awarded to the city. Some highlights. Offhand is our budget is just slightly more than it was last year. Personnel expenses make up the bulk of the budget. We do have 2 major contracts. We manage the yard waste contract and cemetery maintenance. Those come out of our budget. We are somewhat grant funded. About 20% of our budget is grants, basically the MPO and our HUD grant. And then there's some minor grants that are in there too. And then we do offset some of the general revenue expense for my department through basically various fees. You can see there a building, daycare, zoning, basically transactional fees that are charged to the customer. Moving on to the first one, administration. That's basically our front desk administration and myself. We provide customer service downstairs and on the phone. We do process transactions for Public Works and planning. Actually, Public Works staff fills in for vacations and things like that. So we work in tandem very well. They also take care of our financial activities, purchasing, invoicing, things like that. We also, we've kind of shifted some duties and a person from the building regulations to the administration staff, and that's working really well. We are able to process various types of licensing for the construction trades. We're in the process of beginning, and I'll go into more detail about this later, but processing some building permits and things like that at the front window, which means we no longer have one administration tech person doing it, but we have 3 staff members right now. 2 are trained up on issuing permits at the front, and we'll have a 3rd one once our new software rolls out. The big change in this budget is because we did move that admin tech from the building regulations division over to admin. The software that I mentioned was in the budget last year in 2 different divisions, but since we're actually going to be using it throughout the whole department downstairs and other departments, we wrapped that up into the administration just for clarity's sake. And then also there was a gas increase. If there's any questions there, I'd be glad to go into more detail.
Any questions?
Thank you. The next item is planning and zoning. There's basically 2 boards that they support, Board of Adjustment, Planning and Zoning Commission. Their duties are kind of rolled into current planning activities. You can see the list up there of all the things that they process and do. Long-range planning also, if you recall, we just, the Planning and Zoning Commission adopted the city's comprehensive plan. We will be doing a presentation on that, I believe, at the next council meeting for the council. We also field a lot of questions from people wanting to start up businesses or companies that are thinking about relocating. So I threw in the item of assist folks with business development questions. Sometimes they come down from finance wanting to start a business, and they may refer them to us depending on the situation. They also have been very important recently in helping assist with applying for grants. The MSP EDA grant that we applied for, not only was that neighborhood services, engineering over in Public Works, the law department, but two of our planners actually helped assemble all that data and help with the narrative and provide some of the graphics and things like that. So they're very helpful in that regard. They also support the department in various other types of statistical mapping, GIS type activities. The budget's slightly less than last year. Basically, there's no tuition reimbursement, which there was last year for an employee. And then also some of the marketing or advertising, if you will, for the comprehensive plan activity is not in this budget either. I had to answer any questions again.
Seeing none.
The next budget item is the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. This is a regional transportation group, quasi-governmental that is administered by the city. The board of directors has members from Cole County, Coway County, and several of the other jurisdictions around Jefferson City. Basically, they're responsible for making sure that when federal funds are spent on transportation projects, that the proper process of public participation, fiscal constraint, and other items are addressed. They also have been going through, we do this all the time, but recently, project prioritization list to be forwarded to MoDOT for unfunded needs. They've been having us report various unfunded needs, and some of those are actually beginning to show up in their statewide transportation improvement program. So they look at things long horizon, but you'll be seeing some more projects being put in their work program at MoDOT. It's mostly grant funded. Cole County and the Highway Department pay for basically 85% of it, and Jefferson City pays for 15% of that. There's no real budget changes. The budget's less this year, although it may roll over. That transportation feasibility study is paid for by the MPO. That may not get completed this year, I'm not sure, but that's basically the main reason why the budget's a little bit less than last year. Go quicker when I don't look at my notes, too. The next item is redevelopment and grants. Obviously, it is what it says. One of the major things we do is administer some of the city grant-funded programs, and that's down payment assistance, a couple of facade programs, and adaptive reuse. And then we also are very aggressive on applying for competitive grants. You can see up there, there's a state CDBG DR grant opportunity that I mentioned at the last council meeting. Historic Preservation Fund grants. We just got notice that we were awarded 2 grants for about $26,000 last week. The EDA grant I mentioned. There's another EDA grant that we have verbally been told we have been awarded for, I think, $40,000 to $50,000 to do I call it an inventory of spaces and places where businesses, it's an item that was in the Chamber of Commerce's JC strategy plan and also the comprehensive plan, but it identifies locations that and creates an inventory for prospective businesses. Maybe people want to upgrade their space and things like that. So it's an item that's been identified in plans, and we're excited about that. That's a 100% grant that will be coming through the Mid-Missouri Regional Planning Commission. We're working on brownfield grants to help developers in the future know what's going on with prospective properties they may be interested in purchasing. Mid-Missouri Solid Waste District, we're applying for grants there to help us with our recycling programs. And you may recall we've applied for a $750,000 a grant through a private foundation to help rebuild some of the buildings that have been identified in another grant project a couple years ago, the structural survey of unreinforced masonry buildings that identified about half of them needing or should be looked at for some repairs. So we competitively go after grants, and then some of those we also manage. The big one will be the next budget item, our community development block program. And there's a pass-through grants. Some of those will be, hopefully will be awarded. There's the CARE CVB grant that I mentioned will be 148. That's to help daycares and small businesses. So we'll go seek money, and in some cases, we'll be the ones that manage it or pass it through, or we assist other departments with grant activity too. This group also manages the solid waste contract and the recycling program. And the Historic Preservation Commission, which is the big item now, is the Historic Preservation Code update. We had a grant. We did a historic preservation plan a couple years ago that identified a lot of items that we need to address and take a look at. So we're doing that. This budget and 149 CDBG, they're interrelated because the 3 staff members work on both those programs. So you may see a rise in one and a shift in another and whatnot like that. There are 2 pink sheets. We have 4 recycling bins for glass recycling. We have determined that their lifespan is about 8 years because 2 of them are failing. When Republic picks up the bins, you can see daylight in them, so glass is dropping, getting around everywhere like that. We've got 2 bins that need to be replaced or repaired, and basically we want to get on a biennial or 2-year cycle of replacing them. So we want to get caught up and replace the 2 that need to be replaced now. In 2 years, we'd come back, and if need, ask for replacing another one for $5,000. 2 years later, another $5,000. So we're just trying to manage that resource and the funding request on that. So that is my first pink sheet, is for 2 new recycling bins for a cost of about $10,000 total. Glad to answer any questions here too, sir.
So with all the grant that are in the works and coming grant opportunities, it seems like you might need more staff to take full advantage of opportunities that are coming or they're even here.
You're correct. The 148, the CARE CDBG CV grant we have, has $87,000 in there that we can use for administration staff and program delivery. And actually, I've been working on that, and I have a meeting with Steve tomorrow to discuss what our options are. But that is just one grant that we will probably need a new staff member to help administer. And obviously, some of the other grants, if we get those, the same situation with our tornado recovery, $2 million. Hopefully, these are staggered enough where we're not going to ramp up a bunch of people, but we can, hire one person and maybe take some other resources as we need them. So we're very aware. We're kind of stressed as it is right now with, just keeping up with the public participation for some of these grants that are coming our way and that we're competing for too. So you're correct.
Any other questions?
Thank you. 149, this is our annual roughly $300,000 a year HUD grant for community development activities. The budget's 322, sometimes it fluctuates. We've narrowed down our activities to basically 5. Down payment assistance for low to moderate income families, public improvements. Last year we helped with the Chestnut Miller sidewalk project, neighborhood redevelopment activities. Sometimes those are demos when they qualify for the program. Emergency assistant repair program. A lot of times that's heaters in HVAC systems in the winter or the summer. Very few of those. And then, of course, we have a personnel and administration that we pay out of this. Glad to answer any questions on this one, too. Thank you. Environmental health. These are our folks that actually go out and inspect food service locations and daycares. For safety. They also respond when there is perhaps a food recall or outbreak, and even in instances like when the water pressure went down and water service went off downtown, they went out and made sure all the restaurants knew, hey, you can't be washing your dishes with the water until you get the all clear. You need to drain your ice makers. People don't think about stuff like that. And they perform education to the restaurant industry and training. They also manage the compost contract, that contract, and the cemetery maintenance contract. There's a built-in increase in the compost contract. I think we'll be going into year 4 of 5 on that. So soon down the road in the next year or so, we'll be going out to bid again on that. The cemetery maintenance, we're actually going to go out to bid on that. That contract, I think, expires at not the very beginning of the next fiscal year, but a month or 2 after that. I'm not quite sure of the date. It's November or December in there. So the budget is $519,000, of which about $240 is contracted services. Glad to answer any questions on that one too. On a roll, thank you. Property maintenance, they do several things. We have an abandoned building registry, which we manage, landlord registration, which we manage. About a year and a half ago, the Public Works and Planning Committee had a discussion about rental property inspections, and we took it upon ourselves to now annually, we go by every rental property or complex and take a look at what we can, basically from the street is where we're allowed to do inspections, or common areas in some of the larger ones. We've also started earlier this year, we are quarterly going down every street in the city, drive-by inspection. You know, we can't catch everything, but we're trying to catch, you know, large issues that we can see when we're going down the street safely at a slow speed. We've done that twice so far this year. It does take some time, but our software we have, our SmartGov software, allows us to put in all the streets and manage how, if we're going to a call somewhere, we swing by the streets we need to inspect. I mean, we're not just out there driving all day, but we chain our trips together. So we're very efficient in that regard. We have a very high voluntary compliance rate. Nationally, very few cities have one that high. Last year, we only summoned 2 people to court. So far this year, we've summoned 16. And we've had moderate success in some of those activities. There are 2 pink sheets with this budget request. The first one is abatements. You can see on this chart here how much we have been approved for our budgets each year. And in reality, the expenses have been averaging, I think it was around $37,000. We are trending downward. We've been addressing some of the problem property owners. So we believe we do not need, you know, $37,000 each year. There was a supplemental appropriation here a few months ago of $15,000. And there were some funds I did some internal transfers for. So we don't think we're going to be much higher than we were in 2020 at about $28,000, $30,000 for abatements. But the point I want to make is if we just had our $25,000 to begin with each budget year, we wouldn't have to come back and spend time going through that process of requesting it. So I'm requesting $15,000 for next year's budget to be $25,000 for abatements. You see these abatements also, that's where some of the revenue that comes back into the general revenue fund. Those are administration fees that basically cover our expense to send the people to court, to notice up the properties, supplies, staff time. When we implemented our SmartGov software, we did an analysis of where we spend our time and our processes, and we tallied up how much time it takes. And it actually came out to be more like $400 per what we equate to a property maintenance abatement. But it was decided to add $250 to the administration fee. I believe it was maybe $100 before that. So that is my first pink sheet request. Glad to answer any questions on that one too.
Any questions?
And the next one is demos. As you're aware, we were awarded a supplemental appropriation of $300,000 more, and I want to update where we are with that. We have demolished 3 structures so far with those funds. We're in the bid process for 4 more. Altogether, that'd be about $256,000 worth of demos. You know, we're estimating how much it'll cost in the bid process. Once those are demolished here in a couple months, we'll start tackling the ones that are in blue. There's about 8 structures there. We estimate it's another $210,000, of which we'll probably be short $150,000, $160,000 before the end of this fiscal year that we have in the queue. There's another $900,000. This is an estimate based on square foot cost of demolitions that we do in the past. 23 properties. Not all of those are going to need to be demolished by the city. You can see there's a list of some up there in green. We try to divert those to the CDBG program, really try to get the owners to take care of it, or insurance proceeds quite a bit helps pay for some, if not all, the cost. With the shortfall that we are pretty much know that we're going to have, we're requesting another $130,000 on top of the $20,000 that's in the budget. Be glad to answer any questions. Oh, I'd like to add too, I know previously I mentioned the state CDBG CV money might be able to be used for demolitions. We have checked with DED, who administers that program. It is a competitive program too, that the demolitions that go through our process, our hearing process, are not eligible. They have to be demolitions that are voluntarily by the property owner. So there's one pool of money that I mentioned before we might have that we're not going to have to be able to take care of demos. Now, the money that is part of the CDBG disaster relief as part of the 2019 tornado, some of that money would be able to do demolitions. We believe, we're not sure, that we might be able to do demolitions that are also go through our process, but we haven't had that confirmed by the state yet. They want us to have our project in by, I think, May of 22, to give you an idea of how long it's going to take. And then before the money rolls around, it's going to be at least a year before we can actually start spending that money. So some of those buildings, like we had one before I went on vacation early July, literally the roof fell in on itself. That is one that's going out to bid now. So we do have buildings that change their situation, that become more detrimental, that we do shift this list quite a bit based on what we feel is best for the public safety. So I'd be glad to answer any questions or go into more details about this budget request.
Councilman Spicer.
Hey, Sonny, from 2019, how much of them funds are left?
The grant money?
Yeah.
The whole amount that is eligible in 65101 zip code from the tornado is around $7 million. Now, $5 million of that, it's all still there. None of it's been dispersed. Let me back up. $5 million is being administered by the state. They're tying it into low-income tax credits through the Missouri Housing Development Corporation. I believe they are actually moving forward with that. We've seen some activity for developers that are vying for those funds, but the money that would be coming to us, available to us, is not going to be available till, I mean, they don't even want our proposals in of what we're going to spend the money on until next May. So we haven't seen any of that yet. And that's the process we're going through now with that survey I mentioned a couple of days ago.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Regarding the pool of money that property owners would have access to, if you know what that process is and if it would be attainable to maybe contact property owners and see if they would go through that process with the city so they could utilize, because I'm guessing they're not tearing it down because they don't have the money, but if they did, would that be a possibility?
On the state CDBG, I'm getting my acronyms all wrong, I'm sorry. But on the competitive state money that we're eligible for $2 million, certainly reaching out to property owners to say, would you like to do a voluntary demolition? We have this money. That is something that we have talked about doing. And the survey is going to help guide staff in terms of where we want to spend that money. The CV money, they say demolitions are eligible. One trick and one thing we haven't gotten from DED is how do you tie that to COVID-19? So we don't know how we tie a voluntary demo to COVID-19. I lost my job, I can't maintain my property, it was a second home or it was a rental and I want to get out of the business, I want to start scratch with a vacant lot. Maybe that's a justification that we could use that money on that program. We're not at the point of reaching out, although a lot of people have been reaching into us, but we have to go through the public participation process. So certainly we will welcome any comments from the public regarding the expenditure of that $2 million.
Which public comment is due by the 15th, correct?
Correct.
Survey online.
You can go to the city website, scroll down, news and headlines. It'll say state CDBG development.
Only
Public
9
participation.
questions, very quick.
9 questions, really quick.
Okay.
Sounds like you've said that a couple times already.
Well, yeah, and I participated in the process.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you. One more budget.
Do you have access to that kind of information? I mean, do you know the people that were affected and still have?
We know where every abandoned building is. That's registered as abandoned building. We did a couple months ago in anticipation of this, we went out with our property maintenance people and a planner and identified properties that appear to still have damage that haven't been repaired. Obviously, the blue tarp is an indication, but we have an idea. We did an inventory of when the properties got damaged to begin with. So we've been tracking damaged buildings internally. So we have a good idea of which ones are, and certainly in several of those, all we have is the assessor's record of who the owner is, but yes.
Okay, and I was just going to add that if you're having difficulty with finding owners or that kind of information, the Cole County, Miller County Long-Term Recovery Committee within Catholic Charities has done a lot of legwork of making contacts. So that might be a resource that you can utilize.
And part of our process is reaching out to all those groups that have been involved in any sort of recovery on the tornado. So basically, close to the United Way, Catholic Charities, certainly, but yes. One more. Our building inspection division, we've gone through some changes, and it's really nice to say that you can now, on certain types of building permits, walk in, pay your fee and get a permit in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes, depending on what the front counter folks are doing. In November, we will be rolling out our SmartGov software, and we'll have 3 folks down there in the administration team that can actually help facilitate those fast track permits, and we're going to be ramping up to additional types of permits. We'll also be able to have people apply for a permit online and track their whether it's a site plan review or building permit or where they are in their process. So we're becoming more customer service oriented. That software also is going to help us in the back office. Right now, Public Works, depending on the type of project, we may have environmental health folks, planners, the building officials, actually some of the inspectors also inspect or review plans based on their trade. Fire department has several plan review folks. And so we all have this process where we communicate using older technology, but we'll be able to put something in the system and track it. So if someone calls any of those people up, they can look and see, oh, well, that right now has had this, and this signed off, or they can go online and find out. So it's going to help us with metrics, and it's going to help us with also customer service, and things will not be forgotten or left or, things like that. So it just helps manage our workload better. So we're really excited about that. That's the same software that our code enforcement people have been using, and you've seen how that is trending to be more efficient. So our building inspectors also will be able to go out with an iPad, I don't have mine here, or their cell phone, and if they have a question about a property, of course, they'll be able to route themselves, do whatever they need to do, but they'll be able to access what that original plan looks like. So quite often on large projects, let's say the high school was a good example. They're out there, big project, they're making changes on the plans, and everybody's there that has a new copy of the plan that was delivered that morning. Well, our inspector doesn't. Well, it comes in a PDF, he could just pop it open, look at it and say, oh yes, you are changing the electrical outlet. So that's going to help out with efficiency too. Right now, we will do things remotely. Someone may call us and say, I just put a new ground wire in, and the inspector will say, well, send me 3-4 pictures of it, stand by it so I have a scale and I can look at it and sign off on it there. So we're going to take that to the next level too. So we're really excited about that. Our food inspectors are going to be able to use this software too. That will displace roughly, I think it's $4,000 of maintenance of another software. That's going to roll out here also. So we're leveraging the investment in that one technology. Also, regarding Councilman Lester's comment about staffing, one thing we did is we are also putting our application process, going to put that online for like our down payment assistance, emergency home repair, some of these other activities that we may be financing or subgranting to other folks. The application process can be online too, and it will help track that. Right now we have folders, got to dig them up and stuff like that. So that's exciting also. So that is all due, they're testing right now, due to roll out in November. But they have been, due to the pandemic, they've been pushing off because a lot of other cities use their pandemic money for this type of technology to reduce contact with people, be able to work remotely. So the timeline has been put back, but this is supposed to be a hard rollout date through a lot of their staff. Some of the permit numbers are there, give you an idea of how we're trending on non-disaster, that's non-hailstorm and non-tornado building permits. Didn't want to skew the data on giving you an idea of how many permits we issue. And the budget's a little bit lower than it was last year, just due to transferring that one administrative tech into the admin division and doing the cross-training. I'd also like to mention, we are in the process of we have an ISO review, just like the fire department does. The idea is in construction, before it gets to the point of being inhabited and the fire happens, we want to be sure the city and the building codes and everything help support a safer type of construction. We should be getting more information about that soon. The code review is a big item that's going on now, and that helps us with our ISO rating. One thing that's going to ding us is training. They look at every year, and during the pandemic, we didn't have all the training opportunities. So when that comes out, there may be some differences from last year, but hopefully we'll make a step forward. And with that, I think I will entertain more questions because I am done with my presentation.
Any other questions for Mr. Sanders? Seeing none?
30 minutes, I know.
Thank you very much, Sonny. Okay. Next up is the Parks budget. Mr. Spalding.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate the time. The J.C. Parks Commission approved 2021-2022 budget. Is very similar to current years, to previous year's budgets. Increases in salaries, benefits, sales tax revenues are reflected as proposed by our finance department. A couple of distinctions to point out really is the only two that are different from our previous year. First one is the funding of a department-wide cost recovery study. In our 210 budget, we budgeted $25,000 in professional services for the study. Staff has been incredibly diligent in their efforts to reduce subsidies in their respective divisions the past several years. And even as we take a real hard look at our, what we consider our earned revenues and our expenses, right? Things that don't necessarily track with the sales tax revenue, things that we're directly in charge of over the last 5 years. We've seen a real healthy increase in those revenue numbers. And we've also seen an increase in expenses, but less than those increases in our revenues. And that's something that we've made a real focus on. And I'd like to take our staff to that next step, if you will. And that's to shift these division improvements into a comprehensive strategy that improves our efficiencies, our transparency, and our inclusion. So I think that's a big one that we're excited about doing in this next fiscal year. Another one is an increase of $197,000 in the maintenance division. This is to close out a 3-year process that we've done to improve our fleets, 10 new vehicles. Our Assistant Director, JJ, has done a good job working with Enterprise to lease good, safe vehicles and the specialty equipment that we need in so many areas. And that's to provide a quality product for our community and to retain and attract talented staff, which is also a focus of our department. Another difference in this proposed budget, we have refrained from including park improvement projects because of the timing of this capital improvement sales tax H. The fact that the Parks Commission was needed to approve that budget on July 13th. So we kind of, we stepped that back, but with the funding sources being uncertain at that point, we hesitated to list and invest in those additional park projects until that capital is secure. So the Parks Commission and staff, we stand ready to invest in the Parks Master Plan that was completed in 2018. And it was led by our community that stated loud and clear that they want more park projects that improve all of our quality of life and also drive economic impact. Projects next on the queue that we shared, earlier, when the process was for the CIP, those projects include our botanical garden that we are in partnership with our master gardeners, an inclusive park designed and built for everyone of every ability to play together, Hickory Adams Park renovation, trail connections, Frog Hollow, Jackson Street is a couple of the big ones. parks, whatever that looks like to meet the needs of the East Miller community, depending on what, you all decide as a council, whether that park will stay or whether we look at a couple other pieces of property that we've secured. The Grant Street Riverside Park entrance that we're doing with the city, Public Works, and the county. Adrian's Island Park improvements, and pickleball and tennis improvements at Washington Park. I think the last thing to point out in our budget, when you all approved the bonds for the parks in 2019, I was very appreciative of Margie and our finance department that helped us at that point to establish a 10-year projections, right? So that we could show we could pay for those improvements that the community so desperately wanted. So we did that 10-year projections to efficiently track our budget since we were taking on those debt service payments. And so I'm happy to report in these 2 years, we've beat those projections. So we're not done yet. That's a good start, but we're happy that we beat those projections so far. So that's really the major differences in our budget as to last year and even the previous 3. So we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Spalding? Councilman Spicer.
Hey, Mr. Spalding, how you doing?
Good, good.
Quick question. You guys had a trip last month to Arkansas.
We
Do
did.
you know what the cost was on
It
that?
was about $10,000.
About 10,000?
Yep.
And what account did that fall under?
That was paid for by our Parks Foundation,
Okay.
donations. Yep.
Okay. And have you budgeted for the upcoming physical year?
For the another bike trip?
No, yeah. What do you have budgeted? I mean, have you put something in for the new upcoming physical year?
Not for a bike tour, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
We're thinking about potentially bringing the group here, but again, we'll look at our training numbers for that. We have a pretty healthy, training budget that we like to keep and that was that's going to provide, I think, some really good information for us. Yeah.
And does Oak Hills have a cap on the number of golf tournaments they do per year?
Oh, I don't know the number. Stephanie and Brian worked really hard at that. I don't know what they cap it at, but I'd be happy to find that out. We talk about that a lot.
Yeah, I was curious about that because, just want to make sure that they're not competing against other businesses that are not funded by the taxpayers.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we hear that quite a bit, and we try to be aware of that for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Todd, can you remind us how the foundation is funded and how that might be different from other park activities?
Sure. Quite a few years ago, it was formed as a separate 501c3. Its mission is to help parks, the Jefferson City parks for, most recently, certainly the bridge in the park to the island. So it was set up as a separate 501c3 that people could donate to. It helped with the Lewis and Clark Monument by the Capitol and various other projects. We use it a lot now for scholarship programs for kids and families that can't afford things, as well as if there's a specific project. Lots of trees, benches, those sort of things in memory of a family member.
So it's privately funded?
It is, yep.
Councilman Spencer.
With my first question, because it kind of pertains with my lead up on others, but so in the city charter, section 6.2, item C, it states that the commission shall make an annual report to the council. Was that done yet? Or because I just got seated since April 19th. So
What I understand at the charter, you might ask Ryan, but I think the budget presentation I think that suffices
what
as the annual.
supports
Yeah.
that.
The way I understand it.
Because the reason I ask that is because I think it's a valuable resource in understanding the condition of the parks and deposits and the expenditures and helping us formulate your next year's budget. So, can you tell us the cost, not only the construction, but maintenance of greenways? I guess that would kind of entail snow removal, concrete replacement, those kinds of things.
I'd have to get back to you on that because I work a lot with Public Works Department and they have kind of a per foot charge that we can get you.
Okay.
depending on if a trail or a greenway system needs a bridge or if there's lots of excavation involved. But certainly they have some per foot numbers that are current and we could get those.
Yeah, because I've done that in the past with Brady. I'm
Sure.
asking, cost per mile on overlay programs, so
Sure.
that'd be great. And do you have a budget prepared for the Bicentennial Park as far as what that's going to look like?
Yes, we do. And it's been monies that have been set aside over lots of previous 5-year capital improvement taxes, correct?
Do you have an amount for that?
600 and some thousand, I believe, something like that. I don't know the exact number. I think they started setting aside money for that actually in the very first one, if I'm not mistaken.
Was there also some maintenance money in the foundation?
I believe there's something in the four-way MOU that might have addressed that. I don't, yeah, but I don't know that that stayed in it because of the lack of some funds, but I can't remember.
What are the costs of the solar charging park benches?
We purchased, I believe that was 3 years ago budget. I believe there were 5 that were about a little under 5,000 per bench. Yeah.
And do you have plans to purchase any more?
No, we wanted to address the greenway, people that travel on those greenways in what we kind of underserved communities. They work into work, walk into work, sit down, charge their phone sort of thing. Yeah. We're seeing that.
And
But
where are those located within the city?
yeah, they're at the link. There's one right down here in McCarty. There's one over by Community Park. There's one at, I don't know all of the locations.
Can you tell us how much has been spent on art and statues from the park sales tax money?
No, not for certain. Some of that was in the foundation. I'd say this year maybe under 20,000 or so, probably. Yeah. We hope to increase that in this next year's a little bit.
In the binder, I noticed the percentage for programs and facilities costs for recovery from user fees for 2020 and 2021 was 57%.
Mm-hmm.
For 2022, your projection is almost 10% less. What's the basis for that reduction?
Well, it ebbs and flows. We had in the previous year with we decreased in programs so that I think our margins got a little tighter, better. This year we had, I think I can't recall exactly, but I think we had some higher staff costs at the link and not as much revenue proposed as far as a jump this year was a big reason why. Yeah, it did. I can't give you the number of it, but certainly.
And under the proposed budget in training and education and contractual services account, there's quite an increase from 2018, 2019, and 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of give us a little detail?
Well,
on
I make it a point. It's very important to me as I lead the Parks and Rec staff that they continue to get training, not just the training they've always gotten, but even if it's any type of education. This bike tour sort of thing would also fall into that. It's important for me to retain and attract this good staff. I think that we all want to do. It's very important, I think, to increase the training for my staff. That's certainly.
And one other question, just because it kind of leads to my last question. Did you relocate your office from the link to another site?
To the maintenance building, I did.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do you have a cost of what that cost of remodel was for that? And are we running out of space on the link? Is that in the link?
We
Is that-
are, yeah.
Okay. So that-
We were pretty out of space in the beginning, to be honest, but I wanted to be there, especially in the beginning as we kind of opened that pretty exciting and pretty unique kind of partnership. I wanted to be there. But yeah, I think I think there's a lot of reasons why. Yeah, but it was pretty tight over there even from the beginning.
Do you have
And
a
there
cost
weren't
on-
any renovation costs. The offices were already there.
So the cost.
Zero. I mean, there
Minimal.
was some moving costs and that I participated in, but I don't know how we.
I can verify that's a pretty spare office he's got. It's the one I visited at.
I made you sit on an exercise ball, didn't I?
Yes, yes, you
No,
did.
no, your wife did.
My
That's
wife
right,
did.
sorry. I did.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
that was better. 'cause
And
I
she
probably
said
would've
it
fallen
kept her
off.
from talking as much, so, right?
That's good.
She told me that.
I would recommend instead of an exercise ball, maybe one of those park benches to move in there. So
Yeah,
be a little more comfortable. Thank you.
yeah.
I don't sit on balls, so that's not good on my back. So. Thank you.
Councilman Schreiber.
Mr. Spalding, just for informational purposes, what's the status on the Miller Street Park?
You know what? I think I'm going to let my president of the commission talk about that. perhaps. Would that be
Because
all
I
right?
know we talked about,
Yeah.
the cemetery and that, and so I was just curious to know where we are on that.
Excellent. Thank you for the question. Chris Lyko, President of the Parks Commission. I'll be presenting the council with a letter requesting some action from the council very soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Another question, is there any, are there any plans to do any upgrades to Washington Park or Dunsing Field?
There is actually, and my hope is this year that we're able to do some, kind of following along with our master plan document. We received a buyout from a cell tower there that the commission had talked about making sure to invest back in that community. That cell tower was down there. And what we found that we learned in the data from the beginning, Washington Park is the second or third most densely populated. Again, going back to our vision of getting everyone to a park in a 10-minute walk, that was one of the most heavily populated areas without any playground equipment, any play features at Washington Park. And so being able to use the fields is one thing, the ice arena, but to be able to add some things for play, for families, for kids, I think is an important piece. We're going to address that this next year and as well as some renovations to the tennis courts and pickleball as well in Washington Park.
Okay, and my final question is, I guess we're still on track to, I know they done some patchwork up on McClung going up, but I guess we're still on track to do the parking lot overlay up there at McClung.
We are. We're heavily, we've gotten back to that after the flood at the ice arena, and our staff is on that, and we hope Britt maybe can push us up a little bit, but maybe not. But in the next 30 days, we hope to have that all overlaid. We're doing the concrete handicap spots now.
Thank you.
Councilwoman
Just to
Wiseman.
follow on that, the actual asphalt overlay surface was bid with the overlay project, and the contract still September timeframe that planned to be in town.
Councilwoman Wiseman.
Thank you. Mr. Spalding, I was pleased to hear you mention pickleball twice tonight. I've gotten some feedback about pickleball. And I understand that it's a growing sport in the community. And I knew that there was some work on a 501c organization with that. Do you know if they have formed yet?
I don't know if they've officially yet. We're speaking with them, and they said they were working on it for sure. So that could be very helpful to raise funds. Yes.
So where are you working on getting better facilities or improving facilities for them? Is that something that you're working with them for?
Yeah, Chris and I actually had a meeting with the leaders of the group not very long ago, and we spoke of that. Yeah, and I want to. It's kind of one of those things I want to keep in mind. We don't have the facilities that they want. I'll just be point blank on that. But we've gone a long way in the last 5 years to provide 8 full courts and 5 indoor ones, right? So we're not to where we need to be yet. And that's a small percentage, even though it is growing, it's a small percentage of our community, but it's one that they're very, very passionate about their sport.
Oh, yes.
But we have, but I want to make sure my goal is to work off of the data. I want to, not, it's not always maybe who talks the loudest, but it's what's important for everyone. And yes, it would be awesome if we had a 12 dedicated pickleball facility. It would be awesome, but I think we have a lot of needs where we have failed in some areas of making things accessible for everyone. We need to address those things, and that's why we did the permanent ones now, the indoor ones now, and that's why we're looking at the Washington Park ones, and we think we can get another 6 to 8 there as well. And for our size, right, they may disagree with us, and we've had some good spirited conversations, but that, if for a community our size, is very much adequate. It's not top level yet, but we'll get there. But it's a process.
Great, thank you. I'm glad we're working towards
Yeah.
I guess more facilities for them. I
Yes.
knew that was something they were desiring.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
Okay, Councilman Spencer and then Councilwoman Ward.
Thank you. Just to follow up, you mentioned your master plan and having a 10-minute walk to a park. Could you define what you define as a park? Because I think the community might have some differences in that. And so what your vision would be with that?
Well, I hope they don't have too much differences about that. That's an area to play, to congregate, to have events, to look at art, to walk, whatever the case may be. Yeah, I think it's the first thing we want to provide is a safe place to play. I mean, that's kind of job one, if you will, in ours. And so when I talk about, for example, Washington Park, the community that lives in that radius, that 1 mile radius, that 10-minute walk, they have to go far away. They have to get in a car to go play. And so we want to make sure that we can get people, and play means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but we want to get them there to play and to be
So
together.
that would, your vision would be playground equipment, basketball courts and greenways and trails and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
and art facilities to have events, church events, social club events, all those sort of things.
And I assume we'll be receiving a information on the study for the second sheet of ice possibly.
Yeah, I think we're getting really close. There was one last thing that I asked them to address, and that was, it was a great draft of a report. And what I think, what I asked them to do is I wanted to make sure that they addressed some collaborations that we could do with the NHL, not only with Mizzou, but with Lincoln University. So they're working really hard on that. The NHL has some grants and some funding options available to potentially start perhaps a club team at Lincoln, and to provide and do some more things even with Mizzou. Those are both club organizations that we could potentially get here if we have a second sheet. So I really believe in the next 30 days, my hope is, and speaking with the mayor briefly, is that we can have a combination meeting, or at least invite you all to a commission meeting when they're here to present their findings. So the next 30 days, I hope to have. Yep.
Hello.
Laura.
I appreciate the vision of your master plan, in particularly the focus on the neighborhood parks in the lower income neighborhoods. I think it's vital to have a place for children to play that's safe. And thank you for providing information on East Miller Park and the status of that, but you're probably going to know what I'm going to ask, but what is the status of Hickory Street Park and the potential of a basketball court being poured there, because we do have kids playing in the street basketball. So I was just wondering what the status.
Yeah, it's on our list, and in fact, it was supposed to happen after our overlay program. So I hope to have that ready by spring, at least the basketball court, and then a few other things that we had planned. That's another area where we there's about 4 parks that we have some play equipment that's just doesn't work very good anymore, and so that was one of the areas as well. So I really believe in the next year we'll at least have the court there, and hopefully have a plan for what else we'll do there at Hickory.
Councilman Spicer.
Yeah, Mr. Spalding, has there been any more talk about the Ohio Street Bridge, since your ball field's right there? I mean, about working on getting that fixed, and
Yeah.
I think that's key to the people that live on the hill and all the people that come to your ballpark and play and do all that, instead of having to go around and got an emergency or something. How long is it going to take for them to get on top of the hill?
Well, there have been some discussions.
How long has it been out? I'm sorry. 4 or 5 years?
No, it's not been 5. two and a half?
I'd have to look it up, but my recollection is 2 to 3 years.
But the fire department's been not couldn't go over that bridge for a number of years, longer than that.
It was load posted to 10 tons for several years, which actually the fire truck could have gone on, but they chose not to.
We chose not to, correct. So.
Yeah. So the short answer, Councilman Spicer, Matt and I have had those discussions. They've not, I don't have anything definite for you, but it certainly would be something we'd like to do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Spalding? Anything else, Mr. Spalding?
That is it. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Completes the parks budget presentation. Now there are there's a miscellaneous, are there miscellaneous budgets to present?
There's some small funds, if you'd like me to run through them real quick.
Sure.
In the printed books, there's a number 6 tab. In the electronic version, it starts with the JC Veterans Plaza Trust Fund. That's for outside the police department.
Do you have a page number?
It's page 441.
Thank you.
So the budget for this is $1,000 interest and $1,000 for repairs and maintenance. Moving on to the police training fund on page 443. It's funded with court costs and interest. The actual expenditure budget is $30,000, and that is for post-training. Moving on to the lodging tax fund on page 444. This is where the hotels submit a report and the funds on the lodging tax to the city. And we keep an admin fee that's reflected in our general fund revenues. And then the remainder is passed through to the Convention and Visitors Bureau for the conference center, and then the 3 cents for their funding. So that 1.2 million is basically collections, 2,400 interest, and then down below you'll see that 26,400 is the administration fee we retain, and then the 504,000 and 672,000 transfers. The next one is City Hall Trust Fund, page 445. Just has some interest income, no expenditures. We've got the, on page 446, we've got the USS Jefferson City Submarine Fund, just some interest income, no expected expenditures this year. The next one is Woodland Cemetery, page 448. The interest is, the only income is the interest income and no expected expenditures out of the fund. And then the last one is on page 449, the Tif Fund. And this is for the administration of our TIFs. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on those items? Seeing none, thank you very much. So my understanding is that completes all of our departmental budget presentations.
It does.
Thank you all very much. And so we have some time now for item 4, the committee discussion of the budget. And we will have additional meetings for as long as it takes, really, to focus on agenda item number 4. And before I open it up to the rest of the committee, I'll just mention that for the remainder of these meetings, if members of the committee have changes to the budget that they would like to propose, such as wanting to fund something by reducing the funding currently allocated to something else, they should bring those ideas to budget committee meetings, pose them. They will be put up on a spreadsheet on these televisions that is known as the parking lot I don't know when it began being called that, but I think we're stuck with it. Now, so it'll all be shown up on the spreadsheet. And anything that's proposed goes up there. And even if you don't have a source to propose, if you have a use that you would like to find funding for, it goes up there. Really the only control or rule that we have on that is that by the end of the next meeting, you either bring a source that garners a majority vote of the committee, or your item is removed from the parking lot. And we will, I mean, that doesn't mean permanently. If you think you've found a solution in a future meeting, you are certainly welcome to bring it back and try again. But we will continue in that manner until we have exhausted proposed changes and we have a balanced budget. So it's pretty straightforward process. It's also a fairly relaxed one and a conversational one. So I will stop talking now. Are there any comments at this point that members of the committee would like to make about presentations we've seen or about the budgets otherwise? Going once, going twice. Any final comments from staff before we adjourn? Nope. Okay. Well, our next budget committee meeting will be this coming Monday night at 5:30 p.m. in this room. Thank you all very much. We're adjourned.